Howdy fellow model railroaders, my name is Kevin Brown and I want to thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. This episode I want to run through an entire day of operations on my Brownsville Terminal Railroad. I've made some changes to how I dispatch my trains, and I think it'll be fun to watch everything go through, so stay tuned for that. Before I get going on that, however, I think it's well past time that I acknowledge and thank everybody. I now have over 500 subscribers to this channel. Um, I started this out with very simple goals, just to try and show what I was doing on my layout and with my group, the N scale of Bloomington Normal, and anything else I could squeeze in here. And so I'm very pleased that there's now 500 people, more than 500 people, following my antics. I hope you find it interesting, and I will try and continue to add new content and interesting things as they come up. Speaking of interesting things, I want to point out, a good friend of mine, Dave Gentry, had offered to build me a low-profile structure for the back of Blair Yard. I also gave him, he volunteered and I agreed immediately, and it's a very beautiful structure, exactly the sort of stuff I want to have on the industrialized side of my yard. And I also gave him naming rights, so now I have a new industry back there, Gentry Manufacturing. So that's a nice new addition to the yard. In addition, I've got a little some addition over there in Minneapolis, so let's take a quick look there too. I added some platforms for the Minneapolis station. I rather doubt these will be the permanent platforms, but I had them in stock, and I think it gives a good idea of what the how I want the station to eventually go. Also, I bought this structure here, which is a pedestrian overpass, which I'm going to try and use to hide the hole through the wall there. So that's kind of what's going on in Minneapolis. And I got a few other things on the other side to show you real quick, so stay tuned. Online, someone had made 3D printed Quonset huts at N scale. And I've decided that the farm scene that's going to go over here, I'm going to try and have it model or mimic what my grandfather Brown's farm was like when I was a kid. So he had, I think, at least one Quonset hut shed, so I'm going to put one of those in there to try and help with that scene. I've also put together an ad hoc platform here for Thomasboro. Clearly it's not the way it's going to be, but it's to give the idea. Eventually, Thomasboro is going to have a platform only on one side of the track, which means that a train going westbound is going to have to come on the wrong main to drop off and pick up passengers, and I think that'll add up a lot of neat operating issues there. So that's kind of the shape of things to come. Now I want to take a quick look at what we have to do to run the day's trains. Here we are at the staging yard on the other side of the wall from the layout. On my layout, I have essentially 4 different types of trains. First, of course, Class 1 would be passenger trains, which stop at every station, all 3 stations on the layout. Second class would be the freight trains, which actually, there's 2 of them. They actually drop off and pick up cars at Blair Yard. The next class would be unit trains, which just go through the layout and don't really interact with the yard in any way. And last but not least, the humble local, the Brownsville Turn, which originates back there at the yard and goes through and delivers cars and practically gets in the way of everything else. So I went ahead. I find that I enjoy the most about operations on this level is trains interfering with each other and working with each other. So I went ahead and changed my operating schedule, which basically, in a simple manner, always keeps 2 trains running on the main line, or tries to, and see how that all works. So rather than explain anything anymore, what say we go on the other side and start running some trains. First two trains of the day, the northbound freight and the westbound Amtrak. For the moment, they're just going to run around the layout because somebody left a big mess in the yard that has to be cleaned up first. Well, logically, that somebody was me. I have to classify all the cars that came into the yard in the last operating session. So I will work on that while the other two trains are running around the layout. Kind of nice that I can have 3 trains running now, especially considering I've got this new throttle for Christmas. So rather than go through all the rigmarole, I'll classify all these cars and we'll get to the action on the main line. Now that the yard is all classified and ready to rock, it's time to worry about the main line. The first train I worry about, I want to go through its paces, is the passenger train. It's making its station stop at Brownsville. And what I do is wait for the freight train to come around again, and that's my signal. It's time to head off for the next station. I try and run each train one full lap around before it gets to the next location. Truthfully, Thomasboro is only about 8 foot away from Brownsville, but if you've got to go around my scale 1.25 miles main line once to get to it, then it makes it for a more interesting run. Okay, and that also means that my freight trains take about a little over 2 minutes to get around, so that's kind of my timer for my station stop. So here comes the freight train. Looks like it's time for the passenger train to take off. All aboard! The other station stops for the passenger train are pretty much the same, except when it comes to Thomasboro and a train that has to cross over to the westbound main in order to pick up passengers. So what this means is we've got to have a meet. So the freight trains are going to advance to the crossing. And sit in the hole and wait for the passenger train to come by. Here comes the passenger train right on time. It's crossing over to the wrong main, so I can access the short platform. Probably only a couple cars to be serviced at a time. And all the while, the freight train is stuck in the hole. Comes Amtrak crossing over. The freight train gets the all clear. Meets like these, I think, are very interesting. I think add a lot of interest to an operating session. After the passenger train runs through its paces, now it's its turn to get in the way and just keep running. It's time for the freight train to go into the yard, which means it has to do a runaround move rather than back all the way into the yard. So as soon as the passenger train gets by, we'll do a quick runaround. And then we'll head into the arrival departure tracks. I know it's a double track main line, but it is when you have to do runaround moves and things of that nature, the trains get in the way quite a lot actually, and that's what makes it interesting and fun. Here comes the freight train into the arrival departure tracks. It'll have to do a runaround and it will set out and pick up blocks of cars I won't go through all of that. And when it does that, then this train has done all it's supposed to do. Well, these trains have played out and done all they're supposed to. It's time for them to head for the staging yard and get ready for our next batch. And that's that. That is a grand total of 2 trains and classifying the yard. So next, I'm not going to be able to do the rest of the 6 trains plus the local in the same sort of detail. I hope I give you an idea of the basics. So I'm going to put together a bit of a montage of the running of the rest of the trains. And there's no way I can do the local, particularly any service, because that's the most fun train to run on the layout. So what I'll do is next video I'll do just a run of the local in detail. But next I want to show you how all the rest of this stuff goes. Well, that's kind of the end of the day at the Brownsville terminal. The southbound freight still has to drop some cars off and pick some more up. The Amtrak still has to make its station stops and update the cycle all the way bills and car cards. But that kind of is a summation of the entire operating scheme for my layout. As you can see, it's quite elaborate, and actually it took way more time to film than I ever thought it would. But I hope you got some idea of what I'm trying to do, and maybe give you some idea how you want to run your layout. This is the time where I usually talk about the N scale of Bloomington Normal, my train group. We're still hoping to have a small meet the 1st of May, and another one at Galesburg in late June. We'll see how that all works out with the whole COVID mess and stuff. I'm still trying to figure out how to get my shots. So that's kind of all I've got for this time. As always, if you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed what you saw. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.